Hello babes, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate. If you're new around here, you're gonna learn all about me today. Because today I am doing a deep dive into my entire experience and timeline from the time I started my boutique until now, because I don't know many people with a crazier journey than me. And not to say that's like a bad thing or necessarily a good thing, I am going to tell you guys like all the trials and tribulations along the way, things I regret. I've been in business for 7 years. I have had several different storefronts. I've had a warehouse. I have done a mobile boutique. I've been online only. I have, oh my gosh, I have done it all. And I made a video about all of this about like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. And you know, in the back of my head, I'm like, I already had a video about my whole journey, but there has been so much to the journey since. And quite frankly, some of the way more important parts of my journey have happened. And so I do want to completely go through 2017 until 2024. Buckle up. This is my experience and journey of owning and growing a boutique. You guys, grab a snack. This is going to be a crazy story. I am going to start back with a little bit more of my background. So I am from rural Pennsylvania, and my mom has been in the corporate world her whole life in accounting and finance. And when I was growing up, I was definitely not the type of girl that was like, you know, fashionista, wearing like high heels to school, things like that. But I mean, I still like, you know, like to dress cute, like to go shopping. When my mom would work a lot of like long hours in the corporate world, late nights, and sometimes like through the weekends and things like that. And so when we did get a day to kind of spend together, we would love to go shopping. And we didn't just like to go to the chain stores, we loved to go to the boutique stores. And so I love these boutique stores so much. I like, obviously this was a different world back then. Like there was no like online boutiques. There wasn't like a ton of like boutiques in my area in particular. And so I really didn't know much about it. I just like knew I loved these stores. And so I remember like my grandparents asking me like, oh, when you grow up, like, what do you want to do? And I would be like, oh, I want to own a clothing store. And, you know, there was a very much bigger barrier to entry back in that day because there was no just online store. So you needed the capital, lease out a building and stuff like that. So they would be like, well, you can't just like do that. You have to start out somewhere first, earn money, and then you can do that. But I'm just like thinking over here, like, no, I'm just gonna do that. Like I was just delusional. But I feel like that was my first thing that I manifested in my entire life. I went to Penn State for marketing, and in 2017, I graduated, and around the months leading up to me graduating, my mom was like fed up with the corporate world. She's like, I need out. I want to own my own business. I've always wanted to own my own business. I don't know necessarily like what I want to do, but like I want to own it with you if it would be something that you were open to. And she was like kind of wondering like what kind of thing I would want to do. At the time, I was like super into fitness and the gym, and like the fitness influencer was like a thing, I feel like, before even like the fashion influencer. So I would be watching these like fitness YouTubers all the time, and I wanted to like open a gym. And so we had considered that for a little bit, but then I was like, no, I think I want to do a boutique. And so she was kind of looking at like buying a boutique, like buying someone's like current business. But obviously like we didn't have like a huge budget. So like these were just small stores that we would kind of just take over from there. And so one of them that we were looking at was in Jacksonville. And very long story short, we went and like saw this boutique, like met with the owner, and my mom was like, yeah, like let's do this one. We'll move to Jacksonville. We actually signed a lease in Jacksonville. Now, Florida was not super random. I've just always wanted to live in Florida because like palm trees and all that, you know? So I wanted to move to Florida. It was like kind of my idea, but like she wanted to as well. She was like, I don't really care. I would love to like retire and like move to Florida. That's where like kind of Jacksonville came about. I didn't really know anything about any part of Florida. We were going to, you know, take over this person's business, and she backed out at the last second. So what did we do? We were like, well, how hard can it be? we'll just start our own business. That is how we ended up in Jacksonville, because we signed a lease to an apartment, and after the girl backed out, we were just like, well, I guess we're just gonna move there anyway, and we'll just start it ourselves. Just for like a little bit of a dynamic here, I have been dating my husband Cody, like we were like literally junior high sweethearts. We've been dating forever, and he knew when I was like a senior in college that I wanted to move to Florida. So he immediately started looking for jobs in Florida. His brother also was living at Florida at the time. And just long story short, again, he ended up living in Sarasota. Well, if you know anything about Florida, Sarasota and Jacksonville are on completely opposite sides of the state. So I ended up moving to Jacksonville. He ended up moving to Sarasota, and we were like, okay, like we literally just moved to the same state, and now we're gonna do like long distance. Like this doesn't make any sense, and this is gonna come into play in just a little bit here. So that is why I tell you this. But my mom and I, we went to our first market in Atlanta in June of 2017. No idea what we were doing. I went up to the first vendor I saw, and I'll never forget it. It was Jotiful that I went to. And I was like, hi, this is my first market, and like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. So I was wondering like, if you could help me, like, what do I do? And she was like, oh, you just go through the racks, pick out what you want. We can start you an order. And I was like, how many do I buy? Like, I was thinking, you guys, that I bought like 100 of each shirt. Like I had no clue, like no clue. And she's like, oh, like most people just buy like one pack, which is 6. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna do what most people do, And we went through market, we got back from market, the clothes came in, we did like some, little photo shoots. And my gosh, I remember I would do like full on hair and makeup for these photo shoots. Now I'm just like, taking my picture anywhere, anytime. But I was like so serious about it. And then July 15, 2017, we launched our website, and I remember I was just so excited to launch this website. And so we launched the website. I guess it went as well as it could go. And also around that time too, like again, TikTok was not a thing. I had no idea what Facebook ads even were. I literally only would post on like my Instagram and my Snapchat, and I guess like my Facebook at the time. And so I didn't really know like other ways of like making sales, right? Because those first 2 days we were like, woohoo, friends and family bought, some word of mouth bought, and then I didn't know what else to do. The only thing I can think of doing was signing up for like local markets, because I'm like, oh, we can get our name out around here. And we did want to open a storefront, but we just like didn't know about the area. So we were like, okay, we'll do that a little bit later, but first let's do some markets, and we will, set up like a little pop-up shop and get people's emails and get them to follow us on social media, and then we can kind of grow from there. We did a few of our first markets, and I just laugh because I'm like, I thought it was such hard work at the time, but I'm like, oh my God, girl, you have no idea what you're about to get yourself into. But it was a lot of like work. Like we did a few pop-up shops where we had to have these like 10 by 20 booths, and we only had like 2 little cars, and we are just filling up our car, and it's taking hours and hours, and we're sweating setting up these pop-up shops. So I saw some other people at these pop-up shops having mobile boutiques. So like in trailers, in Airstreams, like things like that, or in like ice cream trucks, like, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. That'd be so cool, because then we can like easily set up. It's gonna be so easy. That's what I'm gonna do. So we bought a trailer for our boutique, and this trailer, oh my God, my mom and I were not qualified to drive this thing. We literally had to buy, like, this is the crazy that we did to try and grow our business. Like, I just look back and I'm like, what was I doing? If I knew what I knew now, the money would have been spent so much differently. But that's okay, because I learned so that you can learn from me. So anyway, we end up like investing in this mobile boutique and like this trailer and like a car to carry this trailer around. And then we're like, okay, well, someone has to like renovate the inside of the trailer, because you can't just have like an empty shell of a trailer. We need like floors, and we need lighting, and we need air conditioning, and we need racks and all of that kind of stuff. So we wrapped the outside of the trailer, and then basically we were still kind of waiting for the inside of the trailer to be done. Another way that we started to make sales was I created a Facebook group, and I started doing live sales, and that really, really helped my online like revenue. And going back, I wish that I just focused on online and not this crazy mobile stuff, because I'm just gonna give my opinion on mobile things. Of course, it is a great way to start out. It's a great way to do pop-up shops, but they are a lot of work for not a lot of return. Or if the return is there, it's very short term. You can't, like, there's a very little chance that someone's going to then follow you and really follow up and like become a good customer over time. Like, there will be customers that do that, and that did happen to me, but it's not going to be a lot of customers. So it's just, I just feel like focusing on like online, or like even at that point, I like, you know, could have used that money for a storefront or something like that. Anyways, we live and we learn. That is why I'm telling you this crazy story. Let's move forward. So we did that for about 6 months in Jacksonville. And when we moved to Jacksonville, we moved into like an apartment. And it was so crazy because like we went from, you know, living in our house in Pennsylvania where like there's plenty of land and room and stuff like that. Cause like I said, rural. And now I'm living in like a city in like an apartment. And we only signed like a 6-month lease to like live there. And my mom and I were just like living together. And this is where Cody moving to Sarasota comes into play, because I was like, this is kind of stupid. What if we just move to Sarasota? Because like I'm sick of traveling 4 hours here and there every other weekend. We were both like just wasting a lot of time doing that. And, you know, he had some like people that he knew in Sarasota. I didn't know anyone in Jacksonville. So I was like, let's just move there. So like, again, it made like a very rash decision to like up and move. And we moved to Sarasota. So once we moved to Sarasota, my mom, Cody, and I kind of rented a house to live together for a year. Well, we kind of, you know, figured out where we would live and get the business where it needs to be going. And during that time, we were doing live sales a lot. The Facebook group was big. We were just focusing on online sales and then, you know, some pop-up shops here and there. And we still had the trailer, but it still wasn't actually like finished yet. Like we still didn't get it like finished like inside. So it was like we were paying for storage for that thing. And so I ran the boutique out of like, I had like all of my clothes like hanging up in like a room, like in like it was, I think, supposed to be like a dining room or something like that in our house. And then we had a office where we kept the shipping supplies and packed orders and things like that. But it was just like really annoying because it's like all up in your house. And I think it's a lot different now running a business out of your house than it was back in 2018, because this is in 2018, this is pre-COVID. People are not, they don't like respect the hustle at home as much as they do now, because I feel like COVID really like had allowed people to get over this hump of like, oh, it's cool to run a business out of your house versus like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like, why can't you afford to be somewhere else? You know, I feel like there was like that stigma and it's like not professional. That's kind of my thought process. And I was like, this is just too crazy, like running it out of our house. And like, I want some legitimacy to our business. I want to like rent out an office space. But we live in Sarasota. If you know anything about Sarasota, it's a very like touristy, like beach town. And so rent anywhere is so expensive. So renting out an office space or a warehouse space was so expensive. So what I did instead was I found a very small like shopping center. It was not a destination shopping center at all. It was off the beaten path. It didn't have like complimentary really businesses in it whatsoever, but it was cheap. And I was like, okay, so it was like 1,200 square foot. We rent out this retail space, and we knew that we were mostly gonna just like run our online store in there, but like also people couldn't come in and shop with us in person. And I guess my biggest takeaway from this is that if you're paying for that space, people are going to come in. And let's say you're paying for this space for, I don't remember how much the rent was there. I'm just gonna say $2,000. I don't know. I don't know. But let's just say that you're spending $2,000 on a place to like a retail store, or you could spend $2,000 on an office space. But if you're doing 80% of your sales online, in my head now, I would say an office space makes more sense, because if you're opening now a retail space, you're committing to the hours, and then you're committing to the customers that even if they're not like, even if a lot of them aren't coming in, it's not super busy. When they do come in, you have to kind of like cater to them versus like spending time on your online store that's making you the majority of money. Like, it doesn't make sense. You should have just like gone with the office space. But again, I had no idea what I was doing. So this is why I'm here to teach you all of my mistakes. And I don't regret anything. I don't think they're like mistakes. It's just that like, because it led me to where I am now, but it's just like in hindsight, you know? So that is how we ended up there. And it was like, we truly did just like 80% of our sales online and maybe like 20 10 to 20% of our sales in store. At that time, we were doing lives a lot. Everything was going well. So like we did that all throughout, because that was the summer of 2018. 1 year into owning the business that we signed the lease, and then that kind of happened all throughout 2018, 2019.
Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know I am like so bad about like consistently posting videos, but I love posting videos, so I don't know why I'm so bad at doing it, but I will get better, mark my words. Anyways, I just got to my boutique. I'm actually filming this one on my phone because my life is so hectic right now. It is so busy, and I just went to get my camera out and it was dead, and I was like, no, I'm just going with my phone today because I gotta film.
And then once 2020 hit, that was COVID year, obviously, and that hit in March. And we were already just like so over the store because like no one really came into it, and it was like not the right clientele. But we were like stuck in that lease. We had it for 3 years. So once COVID hit, we like had to shut down the store. We had like the excuse, I guess, to like close the doors and just be like, oh, sorry, we're like online only. And we were kind of in a complex that didn't require us to reopen. They didn't really care what we were doing. So we never ended up reopening. We had the lease for like another like year and a few months, but we never ended up actually reopening. What we did instead was like we just set up like a cute little window display in the front, and then just said shop with us online. And then the whole like back of the store was like kind of like warehousey, and we just like did live sales and processed our inventory and shipped all the orders like from there, like inside, like in the back part of the store. But we still had that, and then we were doing well with that. And then 2021, the summer of 2021 is when our lease was up there. And we were like, well, we're doing like all of our orders like online. Like obviously it makes sense to do like a warehouse, because we didn't want to stay there, but I also didn't want to move. Like I couldn't move the business back to my house, first of all, because Cody and I at that point had moved into our own apartment together in downtown Sarasota, and it was like small. Like how was I going to run it out of there? Actually, I probably could have run it out of there, to be honest with you, but I was just like, how am I going to do that? I need like a big warehouse. So we signed a lease for a big warehouse. I don't know. It was technically a small warehouse compared to a lot of boutiques, but I don't remember the square footage on it, but it was decent size. It had like 3 offices. One of them I used for the like a photo room with a window. One of them I used for my office. One's my mom's office. The other one was like kind of a content / collaborative space. And then you had like the whole warehouse where all of like the inventory and the shipping and all of that kind of stuff was. However, okay, so that was in like July or August of 2021. And we had just moved into that location in that warehouse. And then I decided that, I went to market that year in August. So it was Magic Las Vegas in August, and I was talking to some of my friends, and one of my friends was opening, like she was online at the time, but then she was like opening a store in her local outlet mall. And I remember her being like, oh yeah, like I'm paying this and that, and I'm just doing like a pop-up. So it's like 3 months for the holidays. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds so cool. Like I'm gonna do a pop-up for the holidays. I'm gonna look at my local outlets, and I did, and they didn't call me back. So I called my local mall, which if you're local or know Sarasota, it's the UTC Mall. It's a pretty nice mall. Like where I grew up, we didn't have a mall like this. I called them, and they like called me back, and they were really nice, and they were like, oh yeah, like actually Louis Vuitton is moving out. If you want to take over their lease, like you can do a pop-up for 3 months in the mall. Well, once we met with him and saw the space and everything, I was in love. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like the rent was so expensive. In my head was like, we're gonna get X amount of sales like per month. So like, I think it could make sense. Like I think we could do, I don't think there's any way it would not work out, right? But then after talking with him and then seeing how big the space was, because it was like 3,700 square foot or something like that, I was like, there's no way. The amount of time we put into like making this space our own for the holidays for 3 months, it's just not going to be worth the time and money that's going to go into it for the amount of time that we're actually going to be in that location. And then after talking with him, he's like, I feel like you should at least do a year. So, and we ended up signing for a year. I think it was a year or like 14 months or something like that. And so we had just moved into that warehouse location when I had this crazy idea. And I was like, I had the crazy idea because it was only supposed to be for 3 months. But then it turned into a lot more than that. So he convinced like, let's do a year. So I was like, all right, let's do a year. That'll be fine. And then still ran our business out of that warehouse. So we move into the warehouse in July. I decide, have this crazy idea for the 3 months in August. And then from like, I think we signed the lease in September. And then from September, October, and then a little bit of November, we built out our space. And obviously spent so much money, like so much money on like the fixtures, the signs, like all that stuff. And then we opened like right before Black Friday in November of 2021 in the mall location. And very, very quickly after I did that, I realized that there is no way I need a warehouse and this mall space. Like there's just absolutely no way. The mall space had a huge back room. I was like, why are we wasting money? And it was just like a crazy universe thing where my friend had an online store and she was moving to the area and she was like, do you know where I can rent a warehouse? I love like the size of yours and everything like that. And I was like, you can literally sublet mine. So it all worked out and like it all made sense and everything like that. But I know it didn't make sense that I like signed a lease for a warehouse and then I was like, no, I'm actually gonna go into the mall instead. But obviously knowing the backstory of all of that, you can figure out how that kind of happened for me. Signing for 3 years instead of, or a year instead of 3 months is how we ended up like, you know, being in the mall and then realizing that we didn't need the warehouse if we were gonna go this route. Then let's get into 2022. So we're just a few months into having the store at the mall. Big store, it's next to Lululemon, it's above Starbucks, it's like literally in the center of the mall, and we had such a great location. Like to this day, everyone, like if I meet someone like that lives around here and they're like, oh, like where's your store? And I was like, oh, it was in the store, like the old Louis Vuitton store above Starbucks. They're like, oh, I know. So it was such a good location and it was so big. And I've learned so much owning a storefront because before that I only knew everything about the ins and outs of like online. And now I know the ins and outs of Storefront as well. And so around this time is when I started this YouTube channel actually. And around this time was actually, I think the last time I did my boutique experience, like growing my store. And then I'm like, there is so much that's happened since then, since 2022 to now 2024. Like these past 2 years have been absolutely crazy. And I honestly am exhausted to say the least, but it's all headed towards the right direction. And we will tell the rest of what happened. Number one, when we signed the lease for the mall, again, we only really we planned on being there for longer than a year, but like we really only signed for a year and we were like, we'll see what happens, right? And if not, whatever, we'll just like, you know, go back to having a warehouse or running it out of our store or house or something like that. And so we had the store, and when we signed the lease, we also signed, like when you typically are in like a bigger plaza or like a mall or something like that, this is typically how it goes, is that you are either a permanent storefront or a temporary storefront. And although you'd be like, well, obviously, duh, I'm gonna be a permanent storefront. Okay, in this scenario, we had to pay 3 times the rent to be a permanent store. And the rent was already so expensive. So obviously, I was not going to sign on to be a permanent store. If you are a permanent store, they cannot move you, but they like probably wouldn't even have let me pay the rent for a permanent store because they'd probably be like, girl, like you're in over your head. So I was a temporary store, and in the lease, it did say that if they wanted to move us at any point, then they totally had the option to move us or even just kick us out of the mall in general. But we did write into our lease that like if that were to happen, then we want to like be able to decide if we want to move into one of the stores or if we just want out in general. So we wrote that into our lease, and you know, we did a whole year at that location, and again, if I knew what I knew now, I feel like we could have been like honestly way more successful in that location. We were successful. Like that was like one of the best years we ever had. Like it was so good, but I feel like it could have been even so much better if I knew what I knew now, which is so much more inventory. I needed so much more inventory in there. Not that it looked empty, because I don't think it looked empty, but like I could have done better. Anyways, November of 2022 rolls around. We've been in the mall for a year. We re-signed the lease to stay in our storefront for another 2.5 years. And I was like, okay, this is great. We're thriving. We love it. We're going towards the holidays. I'm like, this is great. And so we signed on for another 2.5 years. And also keep in mind too, that when we did sign our lease in 2021 for the mall, like this is like straight after COVID. Tons of stores were closing. I was like, there's no way we're ever going to be like moved to the mall or like someone's going to want our location. Well, at the beginning of 2023 in February, I'm sitting at home one day and I get a call from the leasing agent at the mall, and he was like, I have some bad news and some good news. Why would he even tell me that he had good news? It was not good news. The bad news is that we're losing our space in the mall. And I was like, are you kidding? And I thought that the good news would be like something actually good, but he said the good news is we have another space for you, but the space was not good. Anyway, he had originally told me, because if you look back at like my old like videos, he originally told me that Nike was taking over our lease, but actually it was Travis Matthew who was taking over our lease, which is like a golf brand or whatever. And I was devastated, like so sad. It was just really, really bad. Our team was like so bummed. It was terrible. And when he showed us the new location that he wanted to put us in, it was so tiny, like literally so tiny. And the problem with it was, because it was, I think, still 1,700 square foot. I could be completely wrong. The issue with it was that, because like the storefront, like the store space in general was actually a decent size, but the issue is it was like 60% back room and like 40% front of house. And keep in mind here, obviously, since we moved into the mall and since we've been into the mall, I have not been focusing as much as on our online store. Like I was still focusing on it. I still would upload new arrivals like every week. I still had all the marketing going. I was still doing all of the things, but I was way more focused on my mall store, like on my in-store, because that's what was making us the most sales as soon as we moved into the mall. Basically, it was like numbers I had never seen before. So I was like, I don't know if this space is gonna work. It's so tiny, but we ended up just being like, well, what else are we gonna do? Like, it's either this or nothing. And we also had like a full staff and everything like that. So I was like, I just felt obligated to do it. He was like, you only have to sign on for a year. I was like, okay, cool. I'll sign on for a year for this new location. And it was so annoying. We had to spend money to move our sign. We had to spend money on movers. We had to spend money, we had to spend $5,000 building dressing room. We ended up spending a lot of money, like unnecessary money. Okay. So we moved into this location, and first few months it was okay, because like our busiest, I think we opened in that location around like March of 2023, and that is like our busiest time of the year. So the first few months were good, and I was like, okay, now that we have the store fully staffed, like we kind of have this going, why don't we look into doing a second location? And honestly, I swear at the time I did not see us ever moving out of the mall. Not ever moving out of the mall, but like I didn't have plans to close it by any means. And so the next like city that we're nearby that would be good to open a store is St. Petersburg. It's like 45 minutes away from our house. But I was like, I love St. Pete. There's so much opportunity there. And I was always kind of just looking on like LoopNet and Crexy and stuff like that for some spaces. And anyways, long story short, found a really great spot in St. Pete. The spot that we're in St. Pete is not on Central Ave, because Central Ave is like the main street there. However, we are in like, I would say like the second most busiest part of downtown, which I think is growing a lot. And plus we aren't spending as much on Central, and plus our building is a lot like nicer than a lot of the places I looked on like the main street there. So I feel like we really made out. We got a good deal. I absolutely love the store. I still love the store. In the summer of August 2023, we looked into doing this. We signed a lease, and then we ended up opening in August of 2023, our second location in St. Pete. So August, September, October, November, December, we are running our 2 storefronts, and slowly or quickly, I am realizing that I cannot do this. Not to say that I can't run 2 storefronts, but I can't do them all. I can't do it, because this downtown location, I control my hours. If an emergency happens, I'm able to close my doors. Also, during this time, I was getting married. I was planning my wedding. And so I literally just opened a store, was planning a wedding. And then now I was running 2 storefronts, like literally insane. Like I was driving myself insane. And the employee issues at the mall, call offs, and also like if people quit, it was just so hard to hire at my mall location. So hard. Like I had to beg people to apply, and then I'm just like hiring whoever I can, you know? And versus at St. Pete, someone asked if we're hiring like literally every single day. Like that's actually not an exaggeration. And the people that I've had there are all still there like a year later, and I haven't had like turnover and stuff like that. But at the mall, it was really, really hard on me. And it's like, not only that, but like the hours were so long at the mall where I was just like, I can't do this. And like if someone calls off on a Saturday, like there goes my entire day because I'm there from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Like it is so bad. So I just couldn't do it anymore. And when the holidays rolled around, I was exhausted. I felt like the boutique industry was just like tearing me apart. I was just so tired of it. And I knew around Christmas time, like when I went home to Pennsylvania to see my family for the holidays, I was like, I cannot do this anymore. People are texting me when I'm just like, no. So the next few months were really tough mentally on me because I knew I was going to be closing this location, and like I can't go telling everyone. I can't tell employees, I can't tell customers, like, and so I'm like keeping this secret in. And it was just really hard for me because I knew that we couldn't close the store until I think it was the end of April. I think it was like the end of April that we couldn't close the store until, because we had the lease until then and I had to pay for it. So I had to, keep it running. I was just really burnt out like last holiday season, like of going into 2024. I was the most like mentally shot that I've ever been. And again, I don't necessarily think it's because of 2 locations. I think it was more of because I was in a mall location, the uncertainty, the non-permanence of the space, the fact that it was hard to hire, and then the hours that I had to fulfill, like get all those employees to like work those like crazy hours. I was like, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. I cannot do this anymore. So I was like calling it quits. I announced in March of 2024 that we were closing our mall location and that we were only going to be in St. Pete, because honestly, originally when I did decide I wanted to close, I was like, it's fine. Especially like employee wise, I can just tell them like, we're just going to a new location and like, you can just work at the new location. So I did plan on kind of replacing the mall location with the downtown location. But then when it came down to it and it was like time to like actually look and like I actually found a space, my gut was just like, don't do this. And I honestly think my gut was right. Like I still don't know to this day if I want to open another store or not, because now it's silly. I live in Sarasota and my store is 45 minutes away, but I love my store. And I'm not really like in the position to move right now because like, I can't just like up and move. Like I could just like buy a new house, but like, that's just a lot. That's a lot. And also my husband works here. So like, that's a lot for him. And so I now have the one location in St. Pete. Really crazy, but you would think it ends there. Nope, it doesn't, because of what I just did. I have had this idea, and I'm not gonna tell the whole story because I have a whole story about it, but I've had the idea of the name of Poppy Jane for a really long time. And I have never really liked the name Vogue Society. Like, I'm just gonna be completely honest. Like, I mean, not that I didn't like it, I guess. Obviously, I'm the one who made it, but it just didn't feel right. It never felt right to me, like, for a long time. And Poppy Jane is after my grandparents. Again, if you want to know the whole spiel about the name, you can like watch my name change video, which is just a few back. But I just like won't get into all of the signs and stuff that I saw, but I knew that I wanted to do something with the name Poppy Jane, whether it was like start a wholesale line with it or any like something like that. I've wanted to change the name of our boutique to Poppy Jane, but I was like, that's just like so crazy. Like the amount of work and time and everything that would take, it's just too crazy. But this past summer, I feel like the universe is like guiding me into the place that I need to be. And I just got too many signs like that it was just the right thing to do to change the name to Poppy Jane, which I'm still just like not even processing that we're like doing this and that it's happening and it happened. But I ended up just being like, you know what? October is like the very slow months in retail for this specific area that we live in. And so I was like, if I'm gonna do it, I should just do it now. I should do it right now, not waste one more day, announce that we're gonna do it. I teased that we had a big announcement and everything like that. And I still feel crazy. I have this like, we talk about like, they talk about things that it's like, what are you like insecure about and stuff like that. And like, I'm honestly like insecure about changing it because I just feel like I have made so many changes in the past to my business that like, I feel like I'm flaky or something like that. Like you might even be watching this and be like, oh my God, like how did you do all of that? But I just like truly feel like I want to figure out like what I like. And I have like such a serial entrepreneur brain that like I want to do everything. Like I love like the feeling of like opening a new store and stuff like that. And like I do love the feeling of re-merchandising and people coming in and like having events, but I also like love like doing, like I love everything, which is the problem until, you know, I realized that like this was a better path than this, you know, but you don't know until you know. And it's hard unless you have that experience, because someone could have told me, and probably did tell me years ago, that like it's location, better to spend money on a good location of a storefront and spend more money on it than just not spending money on it, because it's not going to do you any good in the long run, you know? So those are like the lessons that I've learned kind of along the way. And I just like have insecurity that like I tried all these things, like people are going to think I'm crazy because I just keep like making these changes, but it's just like what I feel is like right. And I decided that we were going to change the name to Poppy Jane. It's after my grandparents. I feel like it's more of like a brand. Like I want it to be more of like a brand, like a solid brand. People know about the brand. People expect good quality from our brand, good customer service from our brand. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I have for the rest of the year, it's my goal to completely like change everything over to the name of Poppy Jane. And one of the reasons why I didn't do it years ago, which I should have just done it years ago, because the longer you wait, like the more work it's gonna be, duh. But like, it just seems so hard. It never seems like a good time, and it never is gonna be a good time really. So I just figured that we'll just work for the rest of the year. And like, I have the legal process happening, state and like whatever wise, of like actually doing the name change. I did the name change on our social medias, on our websites, like all that kind of stuff, but I still have to do the stuff in the store. The storefront doesn't have the new like name necessarily yet. So it's just a lot, because I'll have to replace everything physically, which is going to literally be so hard. But my goal is to get it all done by the end of 2024. 2025 will be my new start. And that is my experience with everything. It's been so crazy, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, because I do feel like it really taught me, like it's taught me like what is actually important, what actually works. And I love sharing all of this stuff with you guys, and I appreciate you. So thank you so much for being here. If you watched the end of this video, please comment below, because you deserve a gold star. I know this was a long one, but yeah, I would just say to focus on what makes you happy. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for lots of new things coming your way with this name change. I wanted to do this video for a while, like an updated version of it. So thank you for listening, and I will see you guys next time. Be sure to subscribe. Bye.